two of history's greatest military minds standing face to face on the dusty plains of North Africa, knowing that the outcome of their confrontation would determine the fate of the ancient world forever. On October 19, 208 BC, the Battle of Zama wasn't just another clash between Rome and Carthage. It was the ultimate showdown that would end 17 years of the most brutal and transformative war the Mediterranean had ever witnessed, the Second Punic War. At stake was nothing less than who would rule the known world, and standing at the center of this epic confrontation were two legendary generals whose names still echo through history today: Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus, Rome's brilliant young prodigy, and Hannibal Barca, the tactical genius who had terrorized Rome for over a decade and was widely considered the greatest military commander who ever lived. But how did these two titans come to face each other on this fateful day? And why would this single battle reshape the course of Western civilization? The story begins 17 years earlier, in 218 BC, when Hannibal launched his audacious campaign against Rome, crossing the Alps with elephants and bringing the war directly to Roman soil. A move so bold and unexpected that it sent shockwaves throughout the Roman Republic and established Hannibal as Rome's most feared enemy. For 15 long years, Hannibal had remained undefeated on Italian soil, winning spectacular victories at Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and most devastatingly at Cannae, where he annihilated the largest Roman army ever assembled and brought the Republic to the very brink of collapse. Rome's strategy had been defensive: avoid direct confrontation with Hannibal while slowly wearing down his forces through guerrilla warfare and cutting off his supply lines. But by 204 BC, a young Roman general named Scipio had convinced the Senate to try a different approach. Scipio, who had already proven himself as a tactical innovator by conquering Carthaginian territories in Spain, proposed something revolutionary. Instead of continuing to chase Hannibal around Italy, why not force him to come home by invading North Africa and threatening Carthage itself? The plan was audacious, risky, and brilliant. Strike at the heart of the Carthaginian Empire while their greatest general was thousands of miles away, and force them to recall Hannibal to defend his homeland. When Scipio landed in North Africa with 2 veteran legions and began systematically conquering Carthaginian territories, burning villages, destroying crops, and cutting off the grain supply that fed Carthage, the strategy worked exactly as planned. The Carthaginian Senate, facing economic collapse and military pressure at their very doorstep, had no choice but to recall their greatest asset, Hannibal himself, from Italy to deal with this existential threat to their capital city. Imagine Hannibal's emotions as he received the order to return home after 15 years of warfare in Italy, leaving behind his dreams of conquering Rome when victory had seemed so tantalizingly close, yet knowing that his homeland now desperately needed his military genius to survive. The stage was set for the most anticipated military confrontation in ancient history, as both generals began maneuvering their forces across the North African landscape toward what would become known as the Plains of Zama. Hannibal arrived in North Africa with his corps of Italian veterans, hardened soldiers who had followed him through countless battles and remained absolutely loyal to their commander. But he faced a crucial disadvantage that would prove decisive in the coming battle. During his years in Italy, Carthage's alliances in North Africa had shifted dramatically, and most critically, the powerful Numidian cavalry that had been instrumental in his earlier victories had now switched sides to support Rome, bringing their unmatched horsemen and knowledge of local terrain to Scipio's army. When the two armies finally faced each other across the plains near Zama, the contrast was striking and would determine the battle's outcome. Hannibal commanded approximately 36,000 infantry, 4,000 cavalry, and 80 war elephants, but many of his troops were hastily recruited and poorly trained compared to his veteran corps, while Scipio had assembled roughly 29,000 Roman legionaries supported by 6,000 Numidian cavalry, smaller in total numbers, but superior in training, equipment, and most importantly, cavalry strength. The night before the battle, according to historical accounts, Hannibal requested a personal meeting with Scipio, hoping to negotiate a peace settlement that would spare both armies from the bloodshed that was sure to come. But Scipio, confident in his position and knowing that Rome would accept nothing less than total victory, rejected Hannibal's overtures and declared that the matter would be decided by sword and spear on the battlefield. As dawn broke on October 19th, both armies formed their battle lines with the fate of the Mediterranean world hanging in the balance, and the tactical dispositions revealed each commander's strategy. Hannibal placed his 80 war elephants in front of his infantry, hoping to break the Roman formation with a devastating charge, followed by 3 lines of infantry. First his weakest troops to absorb the initial Roman attack, then his African infantry, and finally his precious Italian veterans as a reserve to deliver the killing blow. But Scipio had learned from studying Hannibal's previous victories and arranged his legions in an innovative formation that would neutralize the elephant charge by creating corridors through which the massive beasts could run without disrupting his battle lines, while positioning his superior Numidian cavalry on the flanks where they could exploit their mobility advantage. The battle began with Hannibal's elephant charge, and for a moment it seemed like the massive beasts would crush the Roman lines as they had done in so many previous battles, but Scipio's tactical innovation proved brilliant. The elephants, confused by the noise of Roman war horns and drums, either ran harmlessly through the prepared corridors or turned back to trample Hannibal's own troops, neutralizing what should have been Carthage's greatest advantage. With the elephant threat eliminated, the real infantry battle began, as the Roman legions crashed into Hannibal's first line of troops, and initially the battle followed the pattern of so many previous encounters between these two armies, with disciplined Roman soldiers methodically grinding down their opponents through superior training and equipment. However, the decisive moment came when Scipio's Numidian cavalry, having driven off Hannibal's outnumbered horsemen, wheeled around and attacked the Carthaginian infantry from behind, creating exactly the kind of double envelopment that Hannibal himself had used to destroy the Romans at Cannae. The student had become the master, and the master found himself on the receiving end of his own devastating tactics. Caught between the Roman legions pressing from the front and the Numidian cavalry attacking from the rear, the Carthaginian army began to collapse, despite the desperate heroism of its Italian veterans, who fought with the fury of men who knew they were witnessing the end of their legendary commander's undefeated streak and possibly their own lives. The battle became a rout, as thousands of Carthaginian soldiers fled across the plains, pursued by Roman cavalry, in what ancient historians described as one of the most complete victories in military history, with Carthaginian casualties estimated at over 20,000 dead compared to fewer than 2,000 Roman losses. Hannibal himself barely escaped the battlefield, and according to legend, as he fled toward Carthage, he turned for one last look at the scene of his defeat and reportedly said that he should have marched on Rome immediately after his victory at Cannae, recognizing that this moment at Zama marked the end of his dreams of conquering Rome and the beginning of Rome's absolute dominance over the ancient world. The immediate aftermath of the battle was swift and decisive. Carthage, with its main army destroyed and its greatest general defeated, had no choice but to sue for peace on Rome's terms, which were harsh and designed to ensure that Carthage could never again threaten Roman power. The peace treaty required Carthage to pay massive war reparations, surrender all but 10 ships of its once mighty navy, give up all territories outside North Africa, and, most symbolically, hand over all war elephants and promise never to wage war without Roman permission, terms that effectively reduced the once great Carthaginian Empire to a Roman client state. But the true significance of Zama extended far beyond the immediate end of the Second Punic War, because this single battle fundamentally altered the trajectory of Western civilization by establishing Rome as the undisputed master of the Mediterranean world and setting in motion the chain of events that would lead to the creation of the Roman Empire. The victory at Zama marked the beginning of Roman expansion into Africa, Asia, and ultimately across the known world, while Carthage, stripped of its power and wealth, would never recover its former greatness and would eventually be completely destroyed in the Third Punic War 50 years later. For Scipio, the victory earned him the honorary title Africanus and established him as one of Rome's greatest heroes, while for Hannibal, the defeat marked the beginning of a long exile that would eventually end with his suicide rather than surrender to Roman agents. The Battle of Zama thus stands as one of history's most decisive encounters, a single day that ended Carthaginian dreams of Mediterranean dominance, launched Rome toward empire, and demonstrated that even the greatest military genius could be defeated by a student who had learned from his methods and improved upon them, a lesson that would echo through military academies and strategic thinking for centuries to come, making Zama not just the end of one war, but the beginning of a new world order that would shape Western civilization.